technology, what can I say? All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Really appreciate you taking the opportunity to being here today. Oh, my goodness. I continue to be touched and impressed by the goodness and sincerity everybody brings here. So I think I'll start by thanking you, as I often do, for bringing your goodness and sincerity to this place. And I'm always happy when I come here and I look in the doorway and I see all the people sitting and meditating here. You're bringing so much of your own goodness and your intention to this space, and you're investing this space with your goodness. So I want to thank you for bringing your goodness to this place. And so today, my job, as it were, is to say a few things about the Buddhist teachings for you. And the reason I enjoy doing this is because I remember what it felt like to come into a place like this, and to places that were made to look like this. For example, when Khenpo Karthar Rinpoché would come to visit Ohio in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s and the aughts, we would always create a shrine environment for him where he was going to be speaking. We'd put up one of the scroll paintings, the Thangka paintings, or we would put up an image of the Buddha somewhere. And then we'd put his table and his chair, and then we would sort of create this sacred space for him to teach in. And I remember hearing the teachings he gave in places in Columbus as varied as, they were varied. There were lots of different places where he spoke. He spoke at least 4 times at the Unitarian Universalist Church up on Weisheimer. And he spoke in the community room. He spoke in the sanctuary. We put 250 people in the sanctuary one time during his last visit. So we created these sacred spaces, and sitting in those sacred spaces and hearing words that felt to me like they were coming from within my own heart. That was my experience of listening to him teach. Because I grew up in a different religion. Many people do, who come to Buddhism later in their lives. Some people grow up in Buddhism, but very few people in America grow up with Buddhism. And this was true in my era as well as today. And so listening as a person from a different background to these teachings, the first thing I thought when I was hearing them was I was thinking, wow, I've always thought this. He's saying words that speak to me of things I've always believed in. I've always believed in the power of love and compassion. I've always believed in the power of wisdom to transform ourselves. I've always believed that the individual can change in a positive way. I've always believed that. And I've always believed that I was here for a reason, here in this world for a reason, and it's a good reason. It's a good reason. I'm here for a good reason. And I have the potential to be good and to do good and to give good things to other people, because what makes me happy makes them happy, and so on. So I'm feeling grateful, I think, more than anything else today, that we've had all of the opportunities to create sacred space, whether it's here or at the Unitarian Church or, oh gosh, we got picketed there. And we also got picketed when we were at the Broad Street Presbyterian Church. We had a heckler there. It was fascinating. Khenpo Rinpoché was appearing, with Dzigar Kongtrul III, one of the great lamas of our era who passed away too soon in the 1990s. But, and a heckler was telling them that something about defiling the temple of the children of Israel, something like that. And one of our people, Orville Martin, Kathy Jackson's husband, came and touched him on the elbow because he was standing by the door, and he said, "Sir, you're being rude. You're being rude. You'll have to leave now." And the gentleman was surprised, I think, and that someone spoke to him in such a gentle way, and he went quietly until he got outside and realized he had been ejected. And then he was shouting through the windows on his way to his car in the parking lot. Sometimes I think that Khenpo Karthru Rinpoché had what I would call the Jedi mind power that you see in the Star Wars movies, where the great warriors could partially understand and control the minds of other people. I think he had that impact on that night with that heckler. So in any case, the reason I bring up this creation of sacred space is not just to feel this gratitude, which is wonderful, but also to remind everyone that we can create sacred space within ourselves. Anytime, anywhere. We know this is true because we can do the opposite. Okay, we can create sacred space within ourselves purposefully and consciously by creating a space for ourselves to sit in. Even if we don't have a physical location for sitting in our homes, we can actually create sacred space when we sit. When we sit, where we sit is sacred space, because we are there to be with ourselves in a contemplative and intentional way. We're contemplatively and intentionally sitting with our Buddha nature. We're sitting with what is within us. And that's sacred space. Yes, of course, if you can get the fancy stuff and, have images and things like that, that's a plus. But even if you just sit in your space, sit in your chair, sit on the floor, sit on your cushion, and you relax for a moment and think this is sacred space, that's amazing. And like I say, we know we can do this because we so frequently do the opposite. We create disturbance space, chaos space. I went into the office here today and I noticed how many things there were strewn around, and I said, this room looks like my mind, and I'm not sure I like it. Because I'm an idea person, and so idea people we're too busy for our own good. We've got too much going on for our own good. So we have to find a way to sit and be quiet, which is, I guess, why I learned meditation in the first place. I needed to create that sacred space and sit and be quiet. But not only can we have busy minds, we can also be busy with things that are not healthy for us. And that's, I think, something I wanted to mention, because there's a lot of it going around if you haven't noticed. I have to tell you, I was cheering my television last night, not during the football game, but during the commercials. And I don't know, you folks who are, I have to confess I love football, and I'm sorry. Buddha, I'm really sorry I like football. I hope everybody can be safer. Let's see if we can figure that out. And if not, I'll get to like soccer. I will try. So I was watching the football game, and I was cheering the commercials. And that might sound really weird. Okay, not the repetitive ones about jobs at the Kroger warehouse, which I think is great, but the ones where they talked about the prevalence of anger and hatred in society and how we needed to go beyond that. Okay, they were from a Christian church, okay, so that's interesting. It was part of the He Gets Us campaign that some Christian churches support, the idea that Christ or Jesus wanted us to be friends. He wanted us to not hate one another. He wanted us to love each other, because so many people in this country are Christian or Jewish or Muslim, and they all know about Jesus, and they know about God, and they know what God prefers. He prefers for us to like each other and for us to be kind and good to each other. And that's not what's happening right now. So I think it's because people, unfortunately, we're living in a very difficult time, and so there's a lot of hatred running around, and there's a lot of negativity running around. And so, two things happen. We feel outrage, personally, when we see people being mistreated. Why? Because human beings are hardwired for justice. I mean, they did primate experiments where and this also isn't right, sorry, Buddha, but they did experiments where they fed one group of monkeys that did a task, and they didn't feed another group of monkeys that did the task. And when they became aware of what was happening, the monkeys who were not being paid in grapes, they had a sit-down strike and refused to perform the task. So we are hardwired for justice. We know what justice looks like and what it doesn't look like, and we're mad when we see injustice being done. But the problem is we don't just feel it once, we continue to feel it. Well, maybe it's because the injustice continues to happen. So how do we work with that? How do we give ourselves enough space to understand injustice and want to work toward justice and not commit injustice ourselves? Because often what happens is that someone who's been bullied can become a bully themselves. I've seen it happen. It happened to me. When I was a little girl, everybody said I was too bossy, and they didn't like me because I was too bossy. I wanted everything my way. And I was not too shy to tell them I wanted things my way. And then they stopped being my friends because I was too bossy. So I was bullied as a child. And so what did I do? I became one too. But when I learned about meditation and Dharma, I began to see my patterns. Because when you sit and meditate, you actually get to notice your thoughts in ways you never noticed them before. You notice them in a way where you don't immediately jump onto the thought and say, yeah. Right? I didn't buy that thought. I let that thought go by. Or I noticed that thought and it grabbed me, or I grabbed it, and then I said, oh, wait a minute, I'm meditating. And I let it go. And so as we let these thoughts go one after another, we begin to see how we can purposefully take on specific thoughts and purposefully let go of specific thoughts. And this gives us the capacity to practice something the Buddha talked about, which was a middle path. A middle path. And outrage is only one thing that we train ourselves to feel, and then feel again, and then feel again, and then feel again. We keep refreshing our outrage all the time. We also have the same problem with fear. The world is a dangerous place. We're not going to say it's not. Maybe it's not as dangerous as some places, but it's a dangerous place. And maybe it's not as dangerous now as it ever has been, but maybe it is. I don't know. So we have to be both realistic, but we also have to notice that when we feed our fear, we're creating an environment for ourselves that's really unhealthy. And I think that's basically my message today, is we have to be careful what we're feeding ourselves. Outrage, fear, yes, we need a certain amount of fear or we won't take care of ourselves, and we need a certain amount of outrage or justice won't be done. But we have to recognize that there is a limit to everything. And that when we go past that limit, we ourselves can become a bully. When we go past that limit, we ourselves can become a fearmonger. And we can spread our fear to other people who aren't even thinking about it. And then they get fearful too, and maybe they don't have the tools that we have to deal with our thoughts and fears. Maybe they don't have the tools yet to deal with those. And so what we have to do is recognize that when we have these thoughts, we do have a choice. I know that seems a little counterintuitive. Like, I had this thought, so I'm obligated to think it. I mean, didn't it come from some great place within me, this thought of outrage or this thought of fear? Didn't it come from like some deep, meaningful place inside me? And shouldn't I like entertain this fear or entertain this outrage? What should I do? I mean, don't I owe it to my thoughts to engage with them over and over again? And the answer is no, you don't owe them that. This is how habits get formed, by thinking about things over and over again and doing things over and over again. That's how we build where we are, and how we build how we manifest, and how we build all of these things. So I'm thinking to myself, how can I encourage people to have the right amount of outrage and the right amount of fear? How can they have the right amount so that it doesn't tip into unhealthiness? And I've got good news and I've got bad news. Good news is I got a partial answer. And you might say to yourself, Kathy, why did you give a talk that you didn't have the solution to? About something you don't have the solution to? And I said, well, that's my life. Lots of thoughts, maybe a piece of a solution, but there's more discipline that needs to be applied to it before it becomes a real solution. Right now, it's just an idea. Oh my gosh, please don't tell me I just said I have an idea of a plan. I have a concept. Uh-oh, hang on, I have to have some tea. There's a problem with being a writer, especially if you write comedy, or if your mind is bent in that direction. You can't pass up a joke. You just can't. Yeah, sorry about that. And now it's on tape, thank you. I wonder sometimes what people will think. Anyway. But that's really what I wanted to say today, was that we all have fear, we all have outrage. It upsets our minds, and we have the practice of meditation to help us calm our minds. But then how do we turn the calmness that we gain and the mindfulness and the consideration we gain from meditation, how do we turn it into positive change within ourselves as it regards fear and outrage? How do we do that? And lucky, this is the good news. Thank heaven. There's a book here. And it's called It's Up to You. And it is, the subtitle is The Practice of Self-Reflection on the Buddhist Path. And it's by a Tibetan teacher whose name is Dzigar Kongtrul, and that's D as in David, Z as in zebra, I, G as in George, A, R as in Richard, Dzigar. So just look that one up when you go to look up this book online. And he is really fluent in Western culture and really fluent in understanding what makes human beings tick. He knows how we form habits and how we can change habits. And that's the function of the book, is to show us what our habits are and show us means to change them. And there actually is a chapter on courage. Before I do that, okay, does anybody else do this? Do you make voice memos and then transcribe them? I'm kind of like that. You know how it is. Okay. Oh, yeah, okay, very good. I wanted to come back to one more thought before going to Dzigar Kongtrul, and that was, when you're meditating, a thought comes up, and it tells you how important it is. You must think me, I'm very important. But what we're doing in meditation is saying, wait a minute, meditation is more important than this thought that just came up. The practice of meditation is more important than this thought. And we take that on for the period of time we're sitting. Meditation is more important than this thought I just had, which is awesome, because then that allows us to let the thought go. And when it goes, the habit of thinking about it more becomes weaker. It becomes weaker. When we don't feed it, it becomes weaker. So we have to watch and see what we are doing with our thoughts, because one of my teachers told it to me like this: when a thought arises, it's quite fresh, and it might have a piece of information we need, but then what do? We habitually grab onto it and then make it stale. And then it becomes lifeless and stale and probably self-harmful, because we're crossing over old territory again and again and again for no reason. So this is why it's good to learn to let go of thoughts in meditation, because then slowly we'll be able to do this practice of self-reflection that he talks about in the book and say, it is natural that I am feeling this way, but then I can ask myself, is it necessary? It's natural to feel this fear, but do I have to keep feeling it in order to be effective? It's natural to feel this outrage, but do I have to feed my outrage and keep it going in order to be effective? And the answer is no. That was the Buddha's answer. You can be effective without hurting yourself over and over again. You don't have to artificially prolong a thought, which is what we're doing when we go over the same thing over and over again. We're artificially prolonging a thought that ended long ago. And that artificial prolonging of thought is what leads to all of our habits, the good ones as well as the bad ones. And we're encouraged in the early stages in Buddhism to encourage the good ones. Thoughts of love, thoughts of compassion, thoughts of kindness, thoughts of generosity, thoughts of ethics, thoughts of patience, meditation, diligence, all of those perfect virtues that they talk about in Buddhism. Thinking of others, not just thinking of ourselves. And so if we can prolong those thoughts, that's the form we take. And so we get the choice through meditation to do that. So that made me feel better. Thank goodness there's a path. And meditation leads to this self-reflection where I can actually ask myself, do I really need to be thinking this? Is this really helping me to think like this? Is there something else I can do other than sit here and stew in outrage or stew in fear? Is there something else I can do? And then when we get that thought, then we can really start to make progress. Because what's interesting is that he follows this chapter called Training in Courage, where he says, fear and worry are understandable. And feeling concern is actually a form of human goodness. Feeling concern for others is a form of human goodness. He said, but when it prevents us from accepting our life, fear can be crippling. Because what happens is when we become overly concerned and overly worried and overly everything, then we shut down, and then we're incapable of taking in new things like happiness, or others being present with us and maybe like needing us to show up for them in a specific way, but we can't because we're lost in anger or fear. You know, that kind of thing happens. So he says, we find when fear and worry cripple us, he said, we find ourselves saying no to the world. We find ourselves saying no to our good karma and our bad karma. We find ourselves saying no to everything, which is a painful way to live. When we spend our life wishing it were different, it's like living someone else's life. Or we could say it's like living our life despite ourselves. And meanwhile, the full spectrum of our life goes unnoticed. Well, so he says, how do we deal with this? He said, well, first, admit to yourself the reality of the situation. He said, tell yourself. We say, I don't want this thing to happen, or I don't want that thing to happen. He says, we cannot say, for example, I don't want to get old. We're getting older day by day. The way to grow old beautifully is to accept the aging and to do it well. Everything's impermanent and does have an end. And it says every moment that comes into being is a moment of destruction. Ooh, that's deep. Then he says, we can't say, I don't want to get sick. He said, because sickness is an integral part of having a body. Oh, right. Think of how often you have to repair your car, which is a much simpler machine than your body. You'll be amazed that your body functions as well as it does. And then he says, finally, we cannot say, I don't want to die. Everything that is born is subject to decay. He said, we will need tremendous courage and acceptance as we near the end of our life. He said, if we can accept what is happening with courage and with joy, he said, we'll make the transition from this one to the next one go beautifully. In other words, we can't make our lives longer, but we can make them deeper and better. That's something. Excuse me. Then he says, going against these streams of existence is like building a castle of sand by the ocean. We know what's going to happen, but we build it. He says, if we can cultivate an open mind, here's where he gives us the solution. He says, if we can cultivate an open mind, a mind that is open to all of these things, fear can actually become your greatest ally, because facing fear means facing your life, and facing your life means living your life. You become courageous step by step, and you can become victorious over the world of good and bad, right and wrong, comfort and pain. And then he said, this must have been what my teacher meant for me. He said, when he gave me the Dharma name, because when students become Buddhist, a Dharma name is given to them, and it has a meaning, and usually the meaning of your Dharma name is something very powerful. And he said, my birth name was Jigme Namgyal, which means fearless victory. Interestingly enough, the next chapter is titled Finding a Refuge. So he's not just telling us to get strong within yourself and be fearless. He's not just saying words. He's saying, okay, you got to start someplace, and how about starting with placing your trust and confidence in the fact of your eventual Buddhahood, and the fact that others have already attained this, and that they can be sources of strength for you while you are on the path to your own Buddhahood. And so this is why refuge, I think, is the next subject in the book, because we need something. We need something to place our confidence in, to give us a beacon of light, as it were, to let us know that there is another way to be, another way to live. My friends in the recovery tradition, they say fake it till you make it, but they also say how important it is to be surrounded by people who are healthy for us and to surround ourselves with positive things in order to help us heal and help us transcend. And so for us, our pals, our friends are the Buddha, who's the enlightened one, the Dharma, which is his teaching, and the Sangha, which is our community. So I thought it was important to talk about the value of meditation, how it teaches us how to let go of thoughts, how we can then begin to notice our thoughts when we're not meditating, and through the practice of self-reflection, where we are willing to ask ourselves, is this feeling that you have may be natural? It might be natural to feel afraid, it might be natural to feel angry, but is it necessary to artificially prolong it? Is there a middle path, a better way? Where you can note it and keep moving and keep feeding yourself with ways to be that are better than the ways we are. Does that make sense? And I have about 10 minutes more because this will be a shorter than usual Dharma chat, which is why I'm sorry that I missed the refuge prayer at the beginning. I get so excited. You give me a microphone and it's worse. I just have not learned non-self fixation. I can't get past the need to put on a show. But this might be a good time to recite it. Because it's the prayer of taking refuge. Yeah, and I know it's at the end, but let's do it anyway. Because then we'll have maybe 5-10 minutes of discussion. But then I have to crisply bring things to a conclusion around 12:15 so that we can do the honors of helping to keep the lights on. Once a year we do our version of pledge drive, and so we've been doing it for the last week, and so this is the beginning of a celebration of the conclusion of the 1 week that we spend encouraging people to become regular donors. And then there's even lunch. So whether you donate it or not, you still get lunch. So you're all invited to stay for lunch, and so on. So in any case, I think it'd be good for us to talk about our refuge here for a second. So let's recite the refuge prayer 3 times in English, 2 times in English, and then we'll chant it 1 time in its original language. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. And now we'll chant it with the melody I learned. And by the way, pardon my pronunciation. My teacher told me your Tibetan pronunciation is horrible, and I said, thank you very much. But then I didn't bother to learn ways to make it better. Okay. Or sanje chudan soji chonamla jangchu pardu dani kyapsuchi daji jinsoji pe sunamki Drola penjir sanje druparsho. Thinking about what it means to have refuge is kind of a good way to end the formal part of the talk. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoché said that once a person has taken the Buddha as their teacher, the Dharma as their path, and the Sangha as their community, he said they have something powerful to rely on inside themselves. Knowing that they themselves can become Buddha one day, they can think about what it means to be in the company of someone who is always in your corner and wants for nothing more than for you to become like them and to become awakened too. And my teacher said this, he said, was the heart of Buddhist prayer, was recognizing that the Buddha was once just like us, ordinary human beings, and that now he has become more than that, and that he wants that for us. He said that's a different relationship in prayer than other faith traditions have. And he said, so stay with that and be with that. So I guess I did give you a partial solution, the concept of an idea of partial solution. So we have the question microphones, and feel welcome if you have a comment or a question, you can say, and then we can have a little discussion. Yes. Yeah.
Hi, Lama Kathy.
Good morning, good morning.
The question I have is, in that space when a thought occurs and you kind of get yanked into the spiral of a thought that generates a feeling, how do you overcome the tendency to actually kind of like it, want to stay in it?
Yeah.
It's very pleasurable to be indignant.
I get it.
Or feel hurt, or you kind of stay in a space where there's a lot of a powerful kind of energy in that. How do you teach yourself to not want that?
I can't thank you enough for asking this question, because the reason I'm so grateful for this question is because it really cuts to the heart. It just gets right to the heart of why it's not easy. Okay, because we like it. You see what I'm saying? And so I really appreciate you asking about this, because I remember one of my teachers said to me, we have a problem solving our problems because we like our problems and we don't know who we would be without them, right? So I think part of it is recognizing when is enough enough. I think that's how we can start. It's like how much indignance is helpful and how much is harmful. Now, lucky for us, we got science. Thank heaven for science. Science keeps proving Buddhism over and over again. Science is telling us that the stress hormones that get released when we are angry or indignant can actually make us sick. Slowly over time, it causes heart disease, diabetes, and a couple of other things. So we can intellectually take in that information, but then we have to have some self-compassion to know how much is enough, right? Because it does feel good to be indignant, but we also have to remember the downside. And this is like, okay. This is like we have to think about the downside of any of our bad habits. Like, let's say people like to drink alcohol, but they drink a little too much sometimes, and then they feel regret, and then it fuels a cycle, and right? It feels pretty good when you're drinking the alcohol, but after that, it gets a little funny. So we almost have to think about that, the negative side of it, to help tone down our tendency to jump for it. Does that make sense? And so Trungpa Rinpoché gave a teaching on this exact thing one time at KTD Monastery. And he said, the problem we have with anger or indignant and, injustice, that kind of stuff. He said, the problem we have with anger is that we think it's our friend. It's like what is it that my friend in 12 Steps said, the more you drink, the more beautiful everybody becomes and the more handsome you become, It's like, of course, none of that's true. You get a little sloppy and ugly, and then you treat people bad. So it's it's a slippery slope. So, so what we have to do is, he said, we have to undercut the likability of anger. We have to undercut it by reminding ourselves that anger does not make us right, because the other side's angry too. That's what's so weird, because so if, anger made us right, that would be interesting, because then they'd be right and we're right too. Wait a minute, how can we both be right? So he said, you have to remember that too much anger is like, too much of anything. It's going to hurt you. And I think it's remembering, he said, that anger may not really be your friend. Then he said what that will do is that it will begin to allow you to lose your liking for it. He said you'll lose your taste for it just a little bit, especially if you see the outcome. Like, I yelled at somebody and I sure felt good for a minute, but then they were mad at me for a month and they wouldn't let me apologize. You see what I'm saying, right? So what we have to do is we have to do a moderation of our emotions that is really similar to what Gandhi did when he told his followers to moderate their reactions to colonialism, the injustice of colonialism, by trying to promote peace within themselves. And then Thich Nhat Hanh did the same thing in Vietnam. And Martin Luther King Jr. did the same thing in the United States, training people how to moderate their internal feelings in order to be effective. Does that make sense? And so we have to see the downside of anger, first of all, and then say to myself, I think I want to change that in myself. I want to begin to, I can still feel it, but I don't have to keep feeling it. My dad was a 12-step guy, and he said holding a grudge is like stabbing yourself and expecting the other guy to bleed. Which that kind of helped me a lot. Yes. Yeah, so this is not a full solution. But the fact that we make a mistake about anger and we think it makes us strong and good when it doesn't, that helps us to begin to loosen it up. And so my experience with it is that at first you're going to give into it over and over and over again, but maybe sometime there'll be a mild irritation. It's easy to give up. And then you go, wait a minute, I just made a positive change. Right? And then you'll get to feel more confidence in your capacity to moderate and modulate your response so that you can both acknowledge the injustice, acknowledge it. You're not trying to put it under the rug, but you're also acknowledging that you have to work to solve that. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Lama Kathy.
Oh, yeah, no, I appreciate you asking. And I'm embarrassed, but I love answering questions so much that I ran us out of time. I apologize, but I'm sorry. I'm going to have the guys come in now because they've got gifts. And if you can put up with about 10 minutes, it's going to be about 10 minutes of seeing people win prizes. Are you good with that? Yeah, and if you're not, it's okay. But like I say, don't give me a microphone and then ask me to talk. It's not a good thing. Yeah, well, we went a little bit big on the gifts this year. We went a little big, but you know how it is. I'd like for Chuck or Michael, please, to explain what we did and why we're here. And what was the outcome,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come, let's do this together.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that the Fall Fund Drive was a big success. We're still tallying up, all of the numbers, but our goal was 10 new members and 10 increased gifts from current donors. And I believe the last time we checked, we had 9 new donors and 14 increased gifts from current donors. So I'd say that's a huge success. Yeah. And everyone who is a current regular donor or who became a new donor automatically gets some raffle tickets. Right. So that's what we're here to do right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess I want to take a minute just to thank Michael.
Yay.
He works for public TV, So he sort of brought some, fundraising chops to the board, and it's been great to have him help us think about how to do this and to help and run the thing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
without further ado,
Okay.
shall
yeah.
we?
Yeah, and I think I see Julaine moving some tables. Thank you, Julaine. It's like, oh man, thanks. Yeah.
So I
Woo.
want to tell you something on the side.
Yeah.
So the only one we couldn't find
Okay.
was so far was this.
Oh
We
yeah.
found everything else.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
we should still raffle it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
One of the prizes is not present. So you don't have to be present to win, but it has to be present to be presented. Does that make sense? I think it's at my house. Whoops.
so
Yes. Are you going to tell me what we're going to start with at the bottom of the list? Okay. Very good. Oh, I get to.
And remember
Okay.
how we did this before?
No,
We
I
spent
don't.
there.
Oh, okay. You're right. Okay.
All right.
Okay. So I can roll this like they do on television.
Or in conversation.
Or bingo. Okay, any ex-Catholics here? Okay, I will not call out bingo numbers, but it's not that I'm not tempted. Okay, so the first is a lotus seed mala that was blessed by His Holiness the 17th Karmapa. And let's see, whoop, come here, you. I can't look at the tickets, and yet I have to look at the tickets. I may need help here. Close this up in between. Okay, Eric Puffenberger, and he is not here, and I will. Could you write his gift as the? Oh yeah, very good, very good. The next one is the relic case, the wearable relic case that was blessed by the Karmapa. So we're gonna.
And that seed in there, that lapel, was it 16 Karmapa?
I can. It's at the. It's the 16th Karmapa. There's a relic of the 16th Karmapa in this case. And, it's Kashmira. So Kashmira, she's downstairs teaching right now. So, yeah. So she's doing the good work here. Okay. So let's make it roll again. I mean, I'm all about that. Okay, now this will be the prayer wheel. I wanted to win this. Did I get entered? No, I didn't. Yeah, I love prayer wheels, and so let's see. And this goes to Julie Horning. She may or may not be here. Okay, all right. Let's roll it again. Yeah, okay. All right, and then let's see. Next is a meditation cushion set. A brand new, you get to break it in. We gave some of these away, I'm trying to remember, for a local, for the Downtown Residents Association, they asked us to give them something, and I didn't feel right giving them a Buddha image, but giving them a complete meditation cushion set, that worked out. Diane Strasser will win that. Oh, good, she practices, she's been a long time meditator, so she's gonna be happy to get new wheels. Next is a treasure vase. This has been filled with mantras and blessed substances, and it magnetizes goodness, which we all need. Okay, this is, we call this the science of relative truth. It's not enlightenment, but it helps us while we're on the path. And this goes to Dean. Dean Hildreth. He owns a business, and I think it's called Lotus. He used the name Lotus in his business. Let's see. Then, okay, now this is for the 7-inch gold stupa that was blessed by Khenpo Urgyen. And this is going to, Craig. Craig has been, Craig Bergdorf is, he may be retired now, he's a professor. And he is a religion professor at Capitol. Okay, well, and what's so cool is that this is really fun. Okay, now, we're ready. This is the last one. We have a very large Guru Rinpoche statue, and it has to do with bringing peace to an environment and goodness to an environment, it's big. It's very big. Yeah, so it will make a very beautiful offering on your shrine. Let me see, is that one ticket? Yeah, that's one ticket. And that goes to Ben Obringer. And so, all right. He's on our social media team. Okay, so that concludes the, oh yes, once again, we have this key. I love it. It's like, it's not as good as saying, in the parking lot, there's a car with its lights on. It's not that, but it's somebody left us a key. And the key ring is marked from the OSU veterinary school. So somebody's missing something. Okay. All right. All right. Yes. Okay. So what we'll do is, hey, I got done 5 minutes early. All right. Thank you. Once again, just thanks to everyone who helped us with this campaign, because the regular donors are what you guys keep the lights on and make sure that we're here every Sunday so that people from everywhere, people walk in off the street, and they say, hey, what are you guys doing here? We actually had that happen this week. And it's like, well, we're here for meditation. We're here for you guys. So thanks for making that possible. We don't charge people for meditation instruction. Never have and never will. And because it's important to the well-being of everyone. So let's dedicate all this merit. My teacher said, when you dedicate merit, you get the same merit. So let's pull together all the goodness that we brought to this room, dedicate it to the goodness of all, especially all of those who are struggling right now because of the environment, because of warfare, because of disputes. And let's pray that all goes well for all of us. We'll recite this only in English for the brevity of time. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. We'll sit quietly for a moment. All right, thank you, everyone. And you're all invited to lunch, which is happening like soon, like in the next it's ready, okay. Come on down and please enjoy lunch, and I'll see you down there. It's like, thank you to the sound and AV. Thank you so much.